The thing about dovetails is it's one of those classic visual joints. It's really, well, I'll show you one right here. This is about as simple as it can get. This is just a single tail, and this one's not been glued up yet. But this is the tail side, and you see the way it flares like that, like a dove's tail. So that's where the name came from. And then the genius of this joint is that you've got the long fibers of the material coming out on both sides, and the way they interlock and connect, these long fibers overlap these, and these overlap these, and then with the flared shape of the dovetail pushing into the joint, you get a mechanical strength there. So now I can't pull it this way. The only way it can come out is if I go back out the way it came, but with just a little glue, you've got a lot of glue surface. So once you get a little glue in there, it holds the joint together and it works really well. But when you're making or using a dovetail joint in a situation with woodworking, you usually want to orient the flare against the main force. So if I had some kind of force that was pulling, I'd want to have it positioned this way. Not if I had the main force this way, I wouldn't want to have it pulling this way. Now, it'd be pretty unlikely if it was a decent fit that will come apart, but it's just aesthetically one of those things. In practice, like if I'm making a box, it really doesn't matter. Like if you're making like a blanket chest or a little jewelry box, it doesn't matter how you orient the dovetails. In that case, it's more for aesthetics. I'm trying to orient the dovetails where you're seeing the beauty of the outline of the pins. Now, I haven't said anything about pins yet, but this is just a very simple single tail with what are called 2 half pins on the ends. Now, I'm going to put together this drawer. Drawers employ 2 different types of dovetails typically. So when I put that side on, in the back I have what's called a through dovetail, where this side piece and the back piece, they pass through each other completely so that you see the end grain on both corners, just like our first one. That's a through dovetail. So on this viewpoint, we see that here now we've got 2 tails, and we've got a center pin, a full pin, shaped like a triangle. And then we have a flat side on these 2, so these are essentially half pins. So that's a through dovetail. Then in the front, we have more of that classic, iconic looking dovetail. And especially with with contrasting woods like this, where you have the lighter colored drawer side and then the dark end grain of the cherry front. When you get a little finish on there, it really pops and shows that figure. So this is just a classic. Now this dovetail, you cannot see the end grain on both sides. You're seeing the pins here, but when you turn to the front, you don't. This is blind to the front, or a half blind dovetail where you don't see them from one side. All right, check this one out. Now this leg, this is actually, it's been beaten around, but this was actually the foot I made for a walnut chest of drawers. I made an extra one because I just wanted to show this joinery that was used, and it is a full blind dovetail, a blind mitered dovetail. So we've got, over here we've got our tails, 3 tails, and then on this side we've got 4 pins, and then a heavy miter, and it goes together almost like a jigsaw puzzle. And then once it's closed up and glued up, nobody knows they're there except you. But the other thing is, once you glue this up, the only telltale sign is you can sort of see like a little dash line, but then after I would also put a glue block in there. So there's a full blind dovetail. Now you don't make these very often, but it's kind of fun. Now, there's lots of other types, but or expressions of those types of joints. But then the other main category of dovetails are called sliding dovetails. So they can be employed for drawer dividers like this. I mocked up this little thing years ago to just show different ways that I've attached drawer dividers to the side of a case. So this first one shows a twin tenon. So that's one way you can do it. That's a super strong joint, and it actually is strong because of all that good glue area with side grain to side grain. So once you plug that in, that's all set. But you've got to glue those in when you assemble the chest. So it makes it a little more complex to assemble the piece. And but this is a sliding dovetail. And this is the way we used to make them when I worked with Pug. They were hand cut. We would actually, not totally hand cut, we would cut this miter or angle of the long sliding tail on the table saw by just tilting the blade and running it against the fence this way, and then we turn it around and run the other, and then we'd lay it flat and just skim the shoulder, then cut off a little bit of the back, and once you had it in position, you would just knife around it in the front, and then chop it out and just sort of feed your way up. But before you chopped it out, you'd actually saw with a dovetail saw the angles and then chop it. And then you just start fitting it. And once you fit it one place, it looks more complicated than it is. It's really not that bad. Once you get it to start, then you don't ever touch that area again. You just keep touching where it's stopping. So it's like if it stopped right there, I know everything is good up until that point. So I'd remove it and I'd just take a little more off until it advanced all the way and sat up. This one was cut with a combination of a router bit. You can see that end of the router. So you can set up a jig to use a router bit, and then also the sliding tail was cut on a router table with the same bit. And that fits in nice and smooth. So that's a sliding dovetail. Then we have sliding dovetails into columns of pedestals like this. And this is just a little shaker end table, and the third one. So you can see these were all cut with a jig and a router set up. So once those are glued in, it's a really elegant, thin way to create a joint with a lot of integrity. So rather than just doweled in, as the factory production methods came into play, the old ones have the classic sliding dovetail. And oftentimes they're reinforced with, like they call it a spider. It's just a thin piece of metal that is anchored in the middle and then goes out each leg. That metal restricts the legs from flaring here. That's the one weak point of this joint, is that if you didn't have a restraint there on such a small leg like this, the dovetail could act as a wedge and pull up and want to split this side because of the way the column grain is. So that's why you might see a little plate on the bottom of these little things. But other than that, it's a really sweet, elegant joint. I thought we would cut a dovetail and start with the most common, the easiest to cut to begin with, and that is a through dovetail. And I thought we'd use some white pine and some cherry, just like this. So it'll look similar to this as well when we're done. So this is using the white pine. Both these pieces, this is nothing. This is a kind of a scrap piece. Yeah, let's look at this side. This is just a piece of white pine. They're both about 3/4 of an inch thick. You might be doing this. This is sort of the same size joinery we used when we built the tool cabinet and for the blanket chest. So it's pretty heavy, but nice nice material to practice on. All right, so a couple projects that I've done that employed dovetails, if you wanted to get into this after I'm done, is the hanging tool cabinet used a lot of dovetails, and I showed a couple different methods to cut those by hand and then also with a machine assisted, which I'm going to show that method a little later. Also, with the blanket chest video series, I went into 3 different types of methods. One was a dovetail jig, which you can buy, and that's, you might spend $200 to $400 on a dovetail jig if you really want to use them. And then I used the machine assisted with the table saw, and then strictly by hand. So the larger and more you have, the more complex it is to make them fit, because there's more areas for them to not fit. So it's good to start with a smaller amount when you're beginning. And if you start with larger ones, you can also see a little better what's happening. Drawers are fine, but that's about as small as I would go to start, so you really knew what was going on, where you were missing it, or what. So we're going to start with this. Now, I'm going to take this apart just for a second. So here we've got our 2 elements of the dovetails, and I've got my tail piece here. We've got 3 tails, 2 full pins, and 2 half pins on the end. On the cherry side, we've got our 2 full pins will come through and really give us that great look on the end grain. So now, there's all kinds of arguments about which to do first. Should you cut your pins first? Because basically the way you cut dovetails is you cut one shape first, get them square and true, and then you just knife around that shape onto the other one, and then just cut to the knife line. That's all it is. And square them up, clean it out, cut everything. So the question is, which one do you cut first? The tails, and then trace those on the pins, or the pins, and then trace those on the tails? Well, the fact of the matter is, you can do them either way. There are some arguments for one over the other in certain cases. It's nice to know both. It's funny, I learned by cutting the pins first from watching Frank Klaus. Some of you may know of him, the Hungarian woodworker. And great instructor. And I cut them like that for a long time. Well, not that long, probably 10 years, 10, 12 years. Then I saw somebody, Terry Moore, a friend we were in the prison doing a demonstration, and he was showing cutting dovetails for drawers. And he cut his tails first. And I was like, wait a minute, why would you do that? Anyway, long story short, I discovered that it's better to cut the tails first on drawer making, because I could bring the 2 sides together and cut both sides together and cut my tails. Now, if you take the class, you'll learn that more, but I'm not going to go fully into that. But for that argument's sake, I'm going to cut the tails first tonight. And I can get into it more about when the pins would be better. But here we go. So I'm going to set this aside for a second. We'll get out a fresh couple pieces. And the first thing we're going to do is just mark one corner. And let's just say we'll have these 2 come together. Let's say like this. Okay? We'll hit this corner like that. So what I need to do first is mark the depth that these are going to overlap into each other. I need to cut my tail only as deep as the other piece is thick, and my pins are only going to go as deep as this white pine is thick. Now they're the same thickness, so I can set up my marking gauge for one shot. Occasionally you'll have different thickness pieces, and you'll have to use 2 different settings on the marking gauge. Or usually I just use 2 marking gauges so I don't have to move them. All right, so what I do is I'll set the marking gauge so that knife is just slightly proud of the material. Now I'm ready to mark out. So I'm going to take my pieces and with the marking gauge, with this block against the end grain, that's like a fence. I'm going to bring it across and just score a light line there, okay? Go all the way around the white pine piece. And I've got a marking gauge that has a knife on it, and it's been sharpened, so this I only have to go across both sides like that. Now, that's the way you mark them if you're going through dovetails. Now, if I was doing a bunch of drawers, I'd mark them all at the same time. That'd be good to go. Now, I'm going to mark out now the dovetail locations on the white pine. We're going to cut our tails first. So I'm going to have 2 half pins on each end. I'm just going to kind of eyeball this. I know I want the base of the half pin to be about 3/8 of an inch wide. So that's right about there. And then I'll turn around here, hit it there. Okay, so we've got about 3/8 there and 3/8 there. Do you believe me? Let's see what it measured. I'm 5/16 strong. This one looks more like 3/8. 3/8 right there. I must have moved my fence when I came over here. Let me change that.
40 lashes.
All right. Now, if this were a full pin, like let's just say we were 3/8 was a full pin, the center would be right here. And this, I only need to eyeball this because it's made by hand. I'm not doing this with a machine. So those are my 2 centers. Now I'm going to put 2 full pins in between here. So I could take a ruler. Where's my ruler? Oh, here it is. And just measure right on across, right? So we go right from center to center because I'm going to find my other center pins. And I'm at 4 1/4 inches. Divide that by 3. I don't want to do the math. So I'm just going to take this line and extend it up, okay? Just extend it up. And now I'm going to connect, that's like the center line going up the side here. And I'm just going to connect that end, the point, with wherever it matches here. And here I've got 6 inches, so I'll go to a nice easily divisible by 3 point here. So I'm 6 inches from there to there. I'm just going to mark at the 4 and at the 2. So these points are equal distance between these 2 lines now. And if I just take a square, I can square those points back down to my baseline, and those will show me the center of the pins I want. So this is really helpful if you are, dealing with like 7 or multiple pins and you want them roughly equal distant. So now this center point is equal distant or close to it to those 2. Now I'm going to lay out my dovetails. Now this is where you can choose thin, thick, type strong, weak angles like light angles. Now they say the lighter angles are good for hardwoods, stronger angles are better for softwoods. Frankly, I don't think it matters that much. But I want a good looking dovetail, okay? So I think a little stronger angle looks better. So we're going to lay them out that way here. Now, let's just figure out, first of all, what angle we're going to use. You can get a pre-made dovetail jig like this. This one has 2 slopes on it. It's got a 1/5 and a 1/8. So let me show you exactly what that means in case you weren't at math class that day. But all that means is, if I show you on this board, imagine this corner is 90-degree angle, okay? So I've come over, I've already made the mark of 1 inch to this point. Now going 1 over, let's go up 5. That first one said 5. So I'm just going to go right up to the 5 point here. And then I'll go to the 1/8. So I've got 8 inches from here to here. Now if I just connect those dots, I'll go, this is the 1 up to the 5 on a square corner, and then the 1 up to the 8 on the square corner. So what we got there are 2 different slope angles. So you can see this one, if we take our, sorry, I meant to grab this. If we take our little slope, this is the 1-5. Look how that matches right in with our 1-5 line. I'm going to get that tight shot now. And then, I could see, then this one matches right in with the 1-8. See that? Right there. So this is preset for us, 1-8. But you don't need one of these to do this. You could get your own little adjustable bevel gauge and make your angle whatever you like. We're going to go with the 1-5 for simplicity's sake tonight. But you can choose an angle when you enter your dovetail career, and if you haven't already, and you can choose to always make them very fine or strong like John Townsend. What I'm going to do is decide now how wide to make my pins at the bottom. Now we're cutting out the hole for the pins, so you want to pick a chisel that's pretty close to that width, a little under, like about a 1/16 inch less than that. So I've got a 3/8 inch chisel here, and I'm just going to bring it up. I know this is the center line right here, so I'm going to mark a little wide of it, my chisel, holding the chisel approximately on that center line. I'll do it here and here. I don't care if they're not exactly spaced, you know, because we're making this look like a real old piece, a handmade piece. So this one's going to flare this way. So we're going to end up with a tail right here. So you're seeing this tail. And then the rest of them go like that. So I'm going to go ahead and just get my pencil right on the mark, bring up my gauge, and then I'll come over here. I've got to get this one out on the very end of it. Did I get all the way up there? Okay, so now I'm going to turn it where I can handle a little better. Sorry, I was trying to do that for you. It's all about you.
Happily.
So I'll get that one and the last one. Okay, whoops, something happened on that line. Got a little swervy. So I'm going to just, those are my lines now for my tails. Now, I want to remind myself what I'm cutting away. I'm going to take away this area that will actually be the area for the pins, but I'm leaving the 3 wide tails. Okay, there we go. Now I just got to cut these. So I'm going to set it in the vise, and I'm going to come across, I'm going to make these square lines across. Now this is really key. You want to create square and true tails all the way across the board. Otherwise, when you go to press it together with the other piece, if it's angled in one direction, it's either going to pinch or it's going to get tighter as it's pressed in, or it's going to be real loose and floppy. So you've got to get these true. Now, those I know, those lines are squared across, and those are going to help me track the saw. So once I get the dovetail saw going on that line, or even if it's not exactly on the line, I want to make sure it's parallel with the line. All these marks, you notice, are in pencil right now because it doesn't matter if I'm super accurate here. The first lines you put on there do not need to be knifed. Okay, they're just cleanly pencil lined or something you can really see, because this shape, whatever you cut here, is what you want to accurately outline on the next piece. That's when you knife. Okay, so here we go. We've got everything nice and square and true, and I'm going to start here. Now when I use a dovetail saw, I start in this corner near me, and I want to create a groove, and then as I saw, I'm not forcing it, nice light cut, I'm going to be on the corner, and then I'm going to let the saw drop down and across the top, And once I get it horizontal, then I just let it flow at that line angle. If I'm a little different, doesn't matter, just track and stay square across. So see, I'm starting up, I'm going to just let it drop right down in on that pencil line. And then just stop right down there. Same thing again. It's amazing. You guys would not believe how this looks right now. I've got the camera lady really almost resting it on my upper arm, and I'm trying to
Good thing we like each other.
stay focused. Now I'm going to swing over. I'm going to cut the backhand. Now, do you notice I did all the same angle at one time? Yeah, you're right. It is a good thing we like each other. Sorry, I should have reminded. I should have said something.
I won't stop liking you.
I get in trouble for that later. Remember the point? No, I know. Remember when I said, no, I'm sorry.
You're in trouble now.
And you never said anything back? All right, so now I'm going to keep dropping it in, right on across. I'm going back, leaning it the other way. Now I'm doing it, all of them the same, so I can get some repetition of the angle, which increases my accuracy across the cut, okay? So there we go. We've got all those cut. All those lines look pretty true across. You can take the square if you want to check them and see, but if you hit your pencil line, they're pretty good. I mean, I know that I made it look easy because I'm a master. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. This is actually great material to start with. White pine is really easy. But actually, it's an awesome saw as well. This happens to be a Lee Nielsen. There are a lot of great saws out there. You don't need the top-of-the-line saw. Veritas makes a great saw. And it's a molded body. So I would go with that or something like this if you're going to invest in a nice saw. But honestly, it's repetition. It's practice. I've been doing this a long time. So it's like, it's not like you're that good. But it doesn't take that long to get good at this. And what I would do is, if you've never done it, is set up a piece on end like this and make a ton of lines. And just saw and get repetition. Just saw it, saw it, saw it. And then cut it off and do it again. Do it on the other side. Get a good feeling for your saw, and then so you start to get comfortable with it. And that's what we do in our classes too. We try to give you good exercises where you get comfortable. But even that is not enough. It's just like over time, you'll just unnoticeably to yourself until one day you go, oh my gosh, these are like way better than when I started out. You can't really describe where that point in time was, where you suddenly got it. It's just an incremental thing. And you just build a few pieces with a lot of dovetails, and you'll have it. Now, I'm going to go ahead and rough out this material. I want to get these out here. I'm going to start moving now. Here we go. I'm going to get rid of some of this. And using a coping saw, you know, whenever I feel like I'm starting to lose it, I just get my coping saw and cut a few out like this. Remind myself, I can cope. I can cope.
Is a Japanese saw
Sorry,
okay?
What?
A Japanese saw? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for the dovetails?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I used to use one of those a lot. That was my saw. It's sort of what you get used to. I've gone through a number of saws, but since I got the Lee Nielsen, I really like that. Now, I didn't go all the way to the knife line, but I just want to get rid of the waste there. Now, I want to clean out these ends. I want to get that pretty accurate here. I'm seeing the knife line. Maybe you can't see it, but I can see it. I'm going to just stay on the waist side of that knife line. Now you can see it, right? And I'm just going to go right straight across. Nice light touch, straight down. Now before I move it, I'm going to just chop that cleanly with the chisel, and that will really clean this one up, and I won't have to come back to it.
What's the difference between a coping saw and a fret saw, Tom?
A fret saw has a deeper throat, typically. This is a coping saw. Fret saws tend to run with thinner blades as well, but as far as I know, the main difference is that they have a deeper throat here, and I've done a marquetry with them. I have one in storage, but someday we'll do some of that. It's kind of
The
fun.
question might be, is that okay to use on a dovetail process, maybe?
Oh yeah, whatever you can get the waste out with. They tend to be finer blades, so a coping saw, this one has a little more aggressive cut. You can see how easily I went through that. You'd be there a lot longer with the typical blade on a fret saw, but maybe not.
go to the
I
other
think you
side.
can, no, you're okay right there.
No?
Yeah, I'm going to be coming, this will only take a second. It's just the same thing we just did. Chop. Okay, now I just want to clean out between those two pins there. And let's see, I need a cushion. So I'm going to use this little hold fast. And I love these things because you just hit them like that and they spring and tighten on there. Now, I'm going to chop. I'm going to go right to the knife line, but I'm going to take away a little material first. Now, I'll sit the chisel right in that knife line. That's what we just made with the marking gauge. Same thing here.
John is suggesting that coping saw blades have pins and fret saws do not, typically.
Pins, like O at the ends, to lock into.
And Dean is asking, is that coping saw cutting on the pull or push stroke?
Pull. They all cut on the pull. Frets and copings, because they're so thin, if they cut on the push, the blade would buckle. So they cut on the pull. That's why Japanese saws can be so thin, because they cut on the pull as well, where most American saws are push, like the dovetails. That's why my dovetail saw has a reinforced back on there, that brass bar along the top, so it keeps it nice and stiff and straight, and does a good job. So now I'm just right on that knife line. Get into the corners there. And that's it. So now I just need to get rid of some of that little bitsies, and I can clean out here. I want to make sure I've got it deep enough. You can even undercut a little bit on the end grain here between them. Doesn't hurt. It doesn't really help you that much to have. It's not like where the glue joint is. Okay, so you can see that now, nice and clean. There we go. Now we've defined our tails. Now what we want to do is transfer that onto the cherry to cut our pins. Now I'm going to mark, this is the outside top, and I didn't do that at first, so I want to mark this piece. This will be my outside top of the piece. So now I know how these are going to go together. They're always going to be like this. So I'm going to turn it. I'm going to get this in the vise, bring it down. I just want to set it this height here. So it just brings it up off the table a little bit, because all I'm going to do is now put it like this, and I want to mark this out. I'm just going to use my square. I put the square against the front of the piece, and this sticking up gives me reference to hold it square. I bring it up until I see it right where the dovetails are fully set in there. And now, once I get it here, I just hold it down, and I'm going to knife it out. So the knife is flat on one side. This is my marking knife, and that's going to go flat against each of these tails. I'm going to score that shape right down into the pins. Right down into that end grain. And then you turn the knife. This is quite the trick.
I am really in
You're really in there under my
your
arm
way.
practically.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. It makes it more interesting, a little challenging. Okay, so now when I take this away, I can see all my knife lines. And before I forget, I want to scribble on what I'm going to take away. So I'm taking away this wider tail material, because you can get all flipped around in your mind. You don't want to cut on the wrong side of that line. Or you don't want to cut away the tails here, the pin area. It would be hard to fit them together. That's one of the unfortunate things that happens sometimes. I'm going to just bring it, since it's so short, I'm going to just put it right up here, right in the middle. All right, so now I just want to cut on that knife line, but just let the saw touch the knife line on the waist side each time. This time I'm cutting true and plumb down, so I could give myself a little guideline here. I'll turn this way so you can see. Now, after you've done them a while, you don't need these lines, but as Frank Klaus said when I was learning back then, when you're a very beginner, you can put these lines in. It's funny to hear a Hungarian say it. When you're a very beginner. All right, so it actually helps. It's smart because you want to see that saw track, plus you can tell. If you make them too wide off that line, when you go to fit the dovetail, it's going to be really tight. All right, so now I got to go a little to my left. And now I'm going to do the same thing as my saw cut, except this time I'm going to start and I'm going to go on the waist side of that knife line. And it's amazing how accurately you can see this. Like this saw, it's not as hot as it looks. It's not like splitting a hair or anything. I'm starting on the waist side of that knife line. You can see it. And as I drop it down, I want to just see the saw teeth just touching that knife line. I don't want to be over it, or the fit will be too loose. So here we go. Just letting it drop in. And once I get it, straight down. Same thing. And track right across and do the same ones. One more. Okay, so those three, see how I just touching the knife line in each case and sawing nice and plumb and true. Now I'm going to get a little more to my left. So's the camera lady. And I'm going to go ahead. Now I'm sawing on the other side of that knife line. You'll be able to see these cuts a little better. So I want to start it true there. Can't see. That thing right in my face. That one might be a little short. You don't see the handle on that end. The right hand. Okay, so now I'm dropping it in.
Thank you, Michelle, for that idea.
One more. What, someone said use the zoom?
No, she said click the like button. Folks, click the like button.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, that's it. They're all sawn out. Now I just got to clean out that material. Now this is a little heavier sawing, but you can do it on the bandsaw. You just got to be careful when you're doing that, not to cut off your pins. But I'll use the coping saw again here. I'm going to come in. Got to stay above that line. Boy, I'm close to it.
Dan's asking if we're going to be at Goose Bay.
Absolutely, Dan. That's, what day is that? That's the 13th. Friday the 13th and Saturday the 14th next week. We're going to be at Goose Bay Lumber in Chichester. Come out and see us. Check it out on their website, Goose Bay Lumber. So I'm just trying to clean out most of the material. And this is what's great about through dovetails is you can cut through both sides like this. It's not as hard to chop it out.
Yes, Dan, we'll be there both days, all day. Both of us.
Yeah. It's a good time. There'll be some other demonstrators there, and of course lots of Lee Nielsen tools to try out. All right, so now I've got it roughed out. I'm hoping I didn't cut beyond the line. I don't think I did. That one came dangerously close, though. No, we're good. So now we're just going to chop down and finish it up. So here I'm going to get my holdfast back, my little block here. And now I'm going to use a wider chisel. I could use a 1-inch, but I'll stick with this 3/4. Come right in here. So now I don't want to try to get all that off in one shot. It's a little too much. And it might drive the chisel over the line, so I've removed most of it. Now I'm going to set the chisel right in the knife line. And I can just walk it across, setting it right in that knife line. Get it right into the corner here.
So we're trying to confirm if we are going up to Maine for the open house this summer. At Lee Nielsen, yeah, we're trying.
Yeah, we'll let you know as soon as we know. We're just getting in touch with them. We didn't get to do it last year because we had some kind of conflict. But it's a good time. I mean, it's just so many great people to connect with, and lots of demonstrations and seminars, and then it's all free. And then you can take a free tour of the Lee Nielsen tool works there. It's amazing stuff. Okay, so I've just cut halfway down. You can see how nice and clean it is right along the knife line. I'm using that marking knife line as a seat for the sharp chisel And that's how you get the crisp accuracy. So if I cut right to the knife line and I cut right to my outlined marking knife line, what can go wrong? I love that. What can go wrong?
We sure will, Cecil. We'll bring lots of plants.
Oh, yeah. We discount them heavily. Instead of $27, they're $25 with no shipping. It is a great deal. I mean, they're full-size drawings. What are they? 3x4 sheets. Most of them require 2.
Michelle is asking about the chisels you would recommend. We'll put a link to that.
I did a one of these chisels. There's all kinds. I mean, you can buy some pretty expensive ones. I didn't start with expensive ones, and they work fine. You just have to sharpen them more frequently, you know. These are really nice. These happen to be Veritas PM V11. That's the kind of metal it is. It's really, it's nice. It holds the edge really well. And it's not too bad to sharpen either. All right. So I'm going to clean this out. I don't think we're going to do the machine part tonight. I ended up talking more than I thought. This is looking pretty good. I don't have much cleanup to do. And once you do a bunch of them, you start to hit it faster, like without having to clean up much. Now, I'm looking on the end here. I don't see, I could just barely see the knife line here. I may have gone over a little bit. But there you go. So you want to make sure all of the material is lower than the knife line. It's okay to undercut in the middle from both sides, and then we're going to check it. Now, we know it goes together this way. Those pencil lines should follow. So I turn it down like this and set the pins into and fit it together. Hey, looks pretty good, actually. Went together fairly easy, but they look pretty nice. The other one I cut earlier was slightly more snug, but what's great about it is when you glue it up, the moisture in the glue gives you a little bit of swelling in the fibers, and it's almost like this little added measure of healing. So even if you have tiny gaps, don't worry about it. Glue it up and see how it is. Now, if I was doing my first ones, like earlier today, I hadn't cut dovetails for a while. I cut my first ones, and they were a little bit looser, so I just knocked these apart, and I cut them off at the table saw. Just cut them off, both sides. Then you knife around again. And that's how you get better. You could just do this and cut them off and keep trying them until you get a good fit like this. Now let me show you, I got to splash a little denatured alcohol on there so we see what they look like. And this is kind of mimicking what it'll look like when you get a finish on there. Look at that. So the dark end grain just comes popping through. And over here, I get a little tighter. See, it's a little bit open right there, but that's the only one. You could put a piece of cherry in to close that. But the rest of it, that's pretty nice. So I'd be happy with that. And it's flush as can be on the top and bottom because it lined up well. So there you have it, the classic through dovetail in just how many? 20 easy steps.